Mangyo Akaratu Shashati Dachao Mangyosh Dasam Anangu Shautanana Mangyosh Mastai Ashatrincha Auraya Yimdarigu Byodat Wastarem Hashem Vahu Vahishtem Asti Ushta Asti Ushtamai Yadashaye Vaishtayashem Yengyatamat Yesnipeti Vangu Mazda Urvita Ashada Chao Yongam Chao Tash Chao Taosh Chao Yasmede. God bless all of you. Thank you very much. Let's go into something very interesting today. And let's discuss Zoroastrianism and a short history on Zoroastrianism. Very interesting for you to know, because this every time I go to a seminar or a class or a congress, people ask me, Mubejan, who are the Parsis, who are the Iranian or Indo-Iranian Parsis, the Indo-Iranian Iranis, and who are the Iranians? Can you show the difference? So let's go over some of the basic things. The first slide we discussed last time, the approximate date, and there is an accurate date and approximate date, but for those who have a little question in mind, let's put in Ashur Zartush was born about 3,800 years back. So let's start with that number. Somewhere between 1800 to 1500 BC. So that's about 3,500 to 3,800 years back. Now, having said that, as I learned in all the references that I've been through, the Zoroastrian religion, even though it flourished during the time when he was born, came into prominence as the imperial religion during the three imperial empires, or the Iranian empires. So the first Iranian empire, as we know and historically known, are the Achaemenicians, or also called Achaemenians, which is from 559 BC to 331 BC. So that 228 years was during the time of Kurosh Bozorg or Kurosh Kabir, Dariush, Khashayar, all those kings, all the way to Shapur and Kurosh Dovom, all those kings during those 228 years, it is said that the Zoroastrian religion was the imperial religion. I don't want to say it was the dominant religion, but I want to say it was the imperial religion. And then came Alexander, and after the Alexander's ruining the Achaemenician dynasty came the Parthians. Now the Parthians, during the Parthians, there was Zoroastrianism as the imperial religion during those 472 years. It was not as predominant during that time as it was during the Achaemenician. However, in the last empire of the Zoroastrians, which are the Sasanians, during those 428 years, the Zarathustri religion really flourished. So those 428 years, and this was after the birth of Christ. So it was 224 after the birth of Christ to 652 after the birth of Christ. So 428 years, the Zarathustri religion was a truly imperial religion by the Sasanian kings. Something that you should remember and take home with you. So during those three empires, while it was a Zoroastrian religion, were imperial religions, let's see what happened to it. And let's go to the history of Zoroastrianism a little further back and look at today. And this graph, if you look at it, will give you a good, even though the printing is very small on it, please bear with me. So if you attend Dr. Chaichi's lessons on the Ferdowsi's Shahnameh after me today at 10:30, he always talks about these two empires before the Achaemenicians. The first one was the Pishdadian dynasty. This is a mythical dynasty about 3,000 years before the birth of Christ. And this was at the pre-Stone Age times. And this was a pre-Zarathustra area. This was a dynasty in which Zarathustra was not born historically, and he was not in the picture. So where does Ashur-Zarathustra fit in? Ashur-Zarathustra has been assigned to the Kianian dynasty, which was between 3000 BC to 559 BC. And the Kianian dynasty was about 2,500 years in its existence. And it is believed, and a date actually has been given. There is a lot of discussion about this date, but there is a date given to Ashur-Zarathustra being born as 1767 BC. 1767 BC. I will leave it up to you. I'll leave it up to the scholar. I'm just showing you a chart. I believe this date is correct, but there is controversy, there is discussion on it, and that's why there's always a range that I discuss. And we know that during the time of King Vishtaspa, that Ashur-Zarathustra was born. Now that sounds to me very credible. And then I discussed earlier the Achaemenian dynasty was there for 228 years, where Cyrus the Great was there, Darius was there, Khashayar or Xerxes was there, and Darius III were there, and it was the imperial religion of Ashur-Zarathustra. Then came Alexander's rule in the Persian Empire, which spanned about 83 years, from 331 BC to 248 BC. Now, this is historical. Alexander did come and conquer, and when he left and died, his followers and his people had influence on the Persian Empire till the Parthians came. The Parthians ruled for about 472 years, and even though it may not have been the dominant religion at that time, the Zarathustra religion was pretty predominant, or at least being followed by a lot of people in ancient Persia. Then came the Sasanians. Now, this is where our religion truly flourished as a full-fledged religion. That is my belief. And this was just before the Muslim caliphates came. So when did the Muslim caliphates came? They came around 636 after the birth of Christ, all the way till today. There is following of the Islam trying to be the predominant religion on the Persians. So during the Caliphate of Omar and the governorship of Thaqafi and other groups, it was a minority religion under the predominant religion of the Islam or the Muslims. Now, this is a very important date for you to remember. The next line, the last line in the chart. Many people are still confused, and I want to clear up the confusion. When did the Persians emigrate to India? When did the Parsis or the Persians emigrate to India? And a date has been assigned. And I believe, personally, I believe in this date. It was 936 after the birth of Christ, 936 AC. So the Parsis have been in India for 2021 minus 936. So this is a date that you can ascribe to the Persians that came and escaped from the main country of Persia and went to India, a group of them, and settled down somewhere around 936 AC. And I think it's a very credible date. So what happened during this time? And let's divide up the I won't go into this too much. So in the 10th century, so these Parsis of India, a small group of Zoroastrians, they were seeking religious freedom and economic redress, left Iran and went and found refuge in the northwest of India. They flourished in India, and these Persians who settled down in India were then known as the Parsis. At this time, there were still Zoroastrians living in Iran, in the various provinces, mainly in the central provinces. They today are known as the Iranian Zoroastrians. So there are Parsis that emigrated about 1200 years back or 1100 years back, settled down in India and developed into a flourishing community. Those are known as Parsis. Those that remained in Iran during the Caliphate rule and the Islamic rule, even till today, are known as the Iranian Zoroastrians. Now, the third group of people are the Iranians who are in India. Now, who are those people? Now, I used to go as a mubed to their restaurants and to their weddings and perform weddings and sedepushis and do ceremonies in their houses. And those were with my dad, of course, Mubed Fariborz Shahzadi. And those were the Iranian Zoroastrians of India. The Iranian Zoroastrians of India, also called as Iranis. Many of them set up businesses over there, which were restaurants that served tea. And then they were also called chaiwalas or teawalas, chaiwalas. And that is the recent migration. It is not the early migration like the Parsis. The Parsis migrated 1100 years back. But the Iranian Zoroastrians, they started trickling into India with the help of the Parsis. And a lot of the Zartushtis in India, the Parsis, were supporting the Iranian Zoroastrians to come in India, set up businesses, set up the dairemares, and help perform the ceremonies. And those were known as the Iranian Zoroastrians. And they came mainly from the city of Yazd. Some of them came from smaller families, from Mumbai families who settled down. My parents, my grandparents, my great-grandparents, and many of his colleagues that were in Mumbai were part of this Iranian Zoroastrians. So hopefully, I've given you a little background on the Parsi Zoroastrians that came about 1100 years back to India. The Iranian Zoroastrians that came about 200, 250, 300 years back, all the way to migrations during the revolution. A whole bunch of Zoroastrians left Iran as students to attend universities, or even emigrated to India as late as 40 years back, 50 years back, and settled down in India to emigrate to maybe Canada, Australia, and to America. And those were also the Iranian Zoroastrians that came later on. So hopefully that'll give you a little picture of the three different Iranian Zoroastrians: the Parsis, the Iranian Zoroastrians that stayed and lived in the Islamic dynasty or Islamic rule that is even till today, and the Iranian Zoroastrians that emigrated later on in the last 2 centuries as a group for economic reasons, and they are known as the Irani Zoroastrians in India. Now, there is a story I'm sure you've heard about the Parsis and how they emigrated to India. Let me tell you in brief what happened. It's my account, also known as the Kisse. Kisse means a story of. Kesse San John. So during about 1100 years back, a group of Iranian Zoroastrians set sail on a boat from Iran. I don't know exactly where, but I want to assume maybe someplace in Khorramshahr of today, or Abadan or Khorramshahr of today. They took a journey. They took some families and came to settle down in the western or the northwestern part of India called San John. When they landed on the shores of India in the city of San John, or the town or the village of San John, the king or the ruler of that part of the province, his name was King Jadav Rana. And I'm sure you've heard the story. I don't know how true it is, but I'm going to say it again anyways. So as they landed on the shores of San John in India, these people sought refuge as refugees from the Indians, from King Jadav Rana, who could not speak the Persian language, and the Persians did not speak, or the Persian Zoroastrians did not speak the Indian language. So the tale goes as follows. To make it clear that these you people from Iran are not wanted, it is said that he sent a bowl of milk to these ancient Persian Zoroastrians. This bowl was full to the rim with milk, designating or signifying or symbolizing that, sorry, we do not have room for you to come and live with us, and we cannot give you refuge. So one of the people, or some people from these boat people that came to India, they had taken a form of sugar, a form of sweetness, and they sprinkled it into the milk and sent it back to the king and told him by actions to have a taste of this bowl, this milk from this bowl. And to his surprise, when King Jadav Rana, he took a sip from this, found that this milk was sweet, signifying that we as Persian Zoroastrians will come to your community and make your community sweeter, even though you don't have room for us. So during that time, the king laid down 5 conditions, which I'm outlining for you in this slide. He wanted information and explanation about the Zoroastrian religion, number 1. Number 2, he wanted the Parsis, or the Persians at that time, to adopt the language that was local language. At that time was Gujarati. And that's why the Parsis of India speak Gujarati. That's why the Parsis of India speak Gujarati. And he was the Gujarati ruler, and they adopted the language of King Rana. The third one, and that's why you find in many weddings or many Parsis still wear the local dress. And the third condition was the people, the Persians or the Parsis, wear the local dress. So you'll find the people that are in India, the Parsis are in India, they wear the sari. And this is the Indian local dress. And that was one of the conditions during which the conditions during this immigration that was put on the Persian Zoroastrians. The fourth one is the men had come from Iran with weapons. They had swords, they had spears, they had shields probably, and the king requested them to lay down their weapons. Now, if you go to Daramirs in India, they have in many of the Daramirs, you'll find there are little, symbols of these weapons that are left on the walls and on the front door of the Atishkades and Daramirs. So if you find like little medals with weapons on it, like swords and like shields and like spears. It's not because they're a violent people. It's because they were told to lay down their weapons when they started living with the Gujarati Indians as refugees. And one other condition that the king laid, I don't know why he said that, but he said that if when you do marriage ceremonies, you should restrict yourself to your own community and and the marriage ceremony should take place after sunset. And this is mainly for the Parsis. So in the old days and until recently, whenever I perform weddings of Iranians or of Indo-Iranians or Parsis and Iranians, they ask me, Mubejan, is there a restriction to performing the wedding ceremony or the marriage ceremony before sunset or after sunset? And I have to look at the background of that person. So if that person is of Indian background, I do suggest afterwards, but I feel it doesn't matter. We have 5 gods of the day, 5 prayer periods of the day, and the marriage ceremony can be performed in any time. However, I do not want to interfere with that. These were the 5 conditions that were laid down by King Jadhav Rana when the Persian Zoroastrians came as refugees by boat to settle down in India. And they've lived there peacefully, helped in the communities of India, have been very influential, have been very successful, have made great inroads into helping out the Indian communities over the last 1100 years. So these are the Tatars and the Godreges. These are the people and these are the Iranians that have helped in the communities of India. So this will give you a very good background of the 3 different kinds of Zoroastrians that are there present today. And of course, now Zoroastrians are all over the world as immigrants. They moved to Canada, they moved to Australia, they moved to North America, they moved to Europe, they moved to New Zealand. And of course, there are Zoroastrians in Iran still living there. There's Zoroastrians in India still living there. And there's Zoroastrians all over the world. So hopefully this will give you a good background about the Zoroastrian religion. Okay, so I've told you the story of the history of the birth of Zarathustra. I've tried to pinpoint a date for you. It's up to you to research it further and figure out what do you think is the right day, right month, and the right year that Zarathustra was born. I've shared with you the history of the Kianians and the history of the Achaemenicians and the history of the Sasanians and the history of the Parthians and the history as we live today in this world that we are living in today. With that, I hope I've given you some more information on the background and the history of Zoroastrians, the birth of Zarathustra, his message as it is given to us today and we follow today. And hopefully when we discuss the Gathas in the 301, which will be maybe by next month, I will discuss to you the message of the Gathas, the message of Zarathustra, the message of our prophet in very, very simple lay terms. And I'm a very simple person and I like to give you very simple information. With that, I want to conclude with a short prayer. These are the 2 prayers I always say. One of them is Piruzbad, and you can recite it 3 times. Piruzbad, Karu Avija, Vahdine, Mazyasnon. Piruzbad, Karu Avija, Vahdine, Mazyasnon. Piruzbad, Karu Avija, Vahdine, Mazyasnon. This prayer signifies, may this religion that has been handed over to us live and be successful forever. And I always say, Eidun Bad, Eidun Taraj Bad. May it be so, and may it be more so. With that, I leave you all in the hands of your family members, in the hands of your friends. Stay safe, be happy, and take care of each other, because we need each of us to be with each other, taking care of each other. God bless all of you. Thank you very much. I'll see you in 2 more weeks on a Saturday at 10 o'clock. Take care of yourself. Bye.
I have a question, Dr. Mobajan. I have a